All right, Ike. So this week in the news, our good friends at the Land Rover Series 1 Club, of which you and I are both members well, I imagine in about to be expelled, but always just on the edge of expulsion. But they had a big event in the beautiful, beautiful Lake District of our mother England.
Yeah, I was excited to see that some of our friends in the UK have been participating in this year's Series 1 Land Rover Club Rally. I think this is the biggest event that they have had since the pandemic, and getting a lot of interesting photos and whatnot from that event. A lot of our friends are over there driving their early Land Rovers around and having fun in what looks like much cooler weather than what we're experiencing. So I've been quite jealous looking at that, seeing a lot of the trails that they're doing, the green laning and the trials, and some of the show stuff. Looks like a great time. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, it has been unseasonably, let's say, warm here on the west coast of the country.
111 degrees yesterday, which is a new record for this area. That's literally the hottest it's ever been.
Yeah, it was 109 here in Los Angeles, and that was pretty close to being as hot as it's ever been in June. So I can't even imagine, like, what are people in Oregon doing when it's 111 degrees?
They're melting.
Yeah.
They melted into
Yeah.
a puddle. There's just puddles every so often along the sidewalk.
Yeah.
No, it's really incredible. And this early in the year, people are definitely concerned about fires and whatnot,
Yeah.
especially with 4th of July coming up.
Oh,
everybody knows the most responsible people with fireworks turn out to celebrate the 4th of July.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the best way to celebrate a forest fire, potential forest fire season on the 4th of July is, of course, with a Roman candle fight. And that is how I will be spending my 4th of July. So hope everybody can come and join us for the annual Barris Collection dry wood sticks and leaf pile Roman candle fight on the evening of July 4th, as we've rung in the new year that way many times, the new 4th of July year. And listen, I only became an American about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, so I'm still, I thought it was a new calendar year, the 4th of July, sort of like a Chinese New Year thing. I guess it isn't, but anyways, your customs are still so very strange to me. So
you'll get a hold of them.
Yeah,
I think you need more firearms, though.
Yeah, you can never. And Toby Keith CDs. Apparently, that's those two things. I only got the one when I signed up to be an American, so the rest, I guess, just come with time. So I do already have I did go to my citizenship interview in a pickup truck, though. So I feel like I'm already.
Do they give you a certificate like you're an American?
Did. I had to give it back to them, though, to get my passport. So it's currently with them again. So it was sort of like we'll give it to you, but then you got to basically immediately give it back to us. So
that's interesting, because as an American, I don't have that certificate. They don't give you like one when you're born.
You don't get that.
So no. You got a certificate for being an American, and I don't. I feel kind of cheated.
Well, I'll make you a certificate if you'd like. It's got a picture of Toby Keith in the corner, and he's shooting a beaver. So,
geez. Well, speaking of potential tragedies, apparently Liberty Aluminum in the UK is under financial duress.
Yeah, LAT, or Liberty Aluminum Technologies. LAT. The boys from LAT are in big trouble. Apparently maybe days of solvency left before they may go under. And I'm not sure how aware you are of this, Ike, but Land Rovers are made a lot of aluminum, almost entirely out of aluminum now. And this is the primary supplier of JLR for all of their aluminum sheet goods, rather. So it is potentially a big deal.
Yeah, for a manufacturer that prides itself on, or is famously renowned for its aluminum bodywork, That's a serious problem.
Oh man. And they have that enormous press, a press that is the size of a small a small hotel, that does those giant whole sides of Range Rovers and things in a single push. So much so that I believe they dug Michael Bishop talks about it in his book, where they did I think they did an interview with either Spen King or Roger Craythorne. I don't remember which one of them. No, it would have been Spen King. They sat down and talked to him, and that was one of the things on the factory tour, that they were that they were so impressed with, was this building sized press that takes these sheets of aluminum, we assume from the gentleman at Lat, and stamps them out into Range Rover shapes and things. And without that raw aluminum sheet, I think it's pretty hard to make an aluminum car without any aluminum. So
Well, this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other news that we've been hearing about supply chain issues for semiconductors and other things, and so maybe that will hopefully it will resolve itself, and they will get back on track. But it could be a potential problem for making new vehicles. Yeah, if you can't get the body.
I
That
guess
seems
you
like
just start sort of balling up Reynolds wrap and hope for the best. I mean, you just get, I imagine, enough sheets of Reynolds wrap, and eventually you get a Range Rover.
probably just start smelting down Rover V8s with head gasket problems, just in making
no,
making panels out of those.
no shortage,
No
no shortage of
shortage.
those. But for some
No.
reason, the panels, they warp after it's not very long. For some reason,
No.
Immediately warp. I don't know. It's that
Just
aluminum is cursed.
a lot of air gaps in the
Unfortunately,
bodyworks made from aluminum
when
blocks.
that block was designed, I believe the designer ran over a gypsy with his car on the way home or something, and that engine has been forever cursed. So, unfortunately,
That's probably actually what happened.
like a Stephen King novel, cursed forever. So, Ike, on today's Britain's Top Model, one vehicle that is extraordinarily rare in the world of Land Rovering, but also very close to your heart, and something that you're actively in process with, the world famous, and of course very famous in Canada, Forest Rover.
Yes, the Forest Rover. I am excited about the Forest Rover. The Forest Rover is the most popular Land Rover model among 6 to 12-year-old.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when you see this Land Rover, you immediately are drawn to it because it has the largest wheels and tires of any factory approved vehicle ever made.
I mean, of many cars ever made, to be fair, it definitely has. It's the most monster trucky of all of the Land Rovers.
Oh, it's so appealing because it has the 48-inch tall tractor tires mounted to it, and ridiculous fenders or mud guards that go around them. And so it's just a ridiculous looking vehicle. And these vehicles were made by Roadless Traction Limited.
Mm-hmm.
And they are kind of famous for building tractor conversions, like four-wheel drive tractor conversions for especially steep or especially rugged terrain. So they did a lot of chain drive and transfer case conversions on tractors in the 50s and 60s and so on. The Forest Rover itself is it's an interesting beast because it has an extremely wide front axle. In order to be able to turn, they had to push the wheels and tires out away from the chassis quite far because they're so large that they had to make the whole vehicle much wider in order to get that clearance to turn. And they didn't do that in the back, so it has this kind of crab track appearance. So the front axle is much wider than the rear axle. And their justification for that was, we don't want the front wheels traveling in the same track as the rear wheels because it'll get extra traction. But I think from an engineering and steering and capability perspective, that has since been proven to not be true. But I suppose in certain circumstances, having the rear wheels not in the track or furrow made by the front wheels could make it more capable. It has it's just a crazy looking vehicle because it has a custom bed on it, because there wasn't any way to make the factory beds accommodate those extremely large wheels and tires. But by and large, the Land Rover portion of it is not as heavily modified as you would expect.
Well, you would think to drive those giant tractor wheels, you would need some amount of modification to the Land Rover motor at the very least.
See, that is not true, because what they did was they re-geared the axles. They used planetary hubs and epic cyclic gearing in the hubs to to accommodate, to basically use the standard gearing in the Land Rover transmission and transfer case and drive the wheels at a much slower rate. So one of the particular features of this car is, of course, the planetary axles, which reduces the gearing quite a bit. I want to say the final drive on the gearing, instead of being 4.7, is more like 13 to 1 or something like that. So it's quite a bit lower geared than a standard
winning
Land
any
Rover.
drag races, unless that drag race is up a very slippery and muddy hill.
Or dragging something.
Or literally a drag race.
Yes. If it's dragging something, it might still win. It is an extremely capable Land Rover, because the rolling resistance with those huge wheels and tires is quite low. It doesn't have locking differentials. It has these axles, and these axles were kind of mythical in the Land Rover world, because these vehicles are so unusual. I think they made, there's various reports, and they didn't keep great records, but somewhere between 9 and 20 vehicles. Some say there were 9 vehicles and 20 sets of axles. Some say there were 20 vehicles, but certainly there are not 20 that still survive.
Yeah, that's for sure.
The axles themselves, there was a lot of speculation. Who made them? Where did they come from? You know how these Land Rover myths perpetuate themselves. One person says it, the next person repeats it. So, growing up and reading about this vehicle, a lot of people speculated that the axles were old Studebaker military truck axles from World War II.
Yeah.
And that is not true.
Oh,
that is not true. The axles were made by a company called Kirkstall Forge. And Kirkstall Forge was a forge that was essentially in business from the year after the Battle of Hastings, like 1067. They were making like smelting iron, making anvils, making like wagon axles, and that progressed until the 60s, when they were making forklift axles, industrial axles, these sorts of things. And so Roadless Traction Limited apparently worked with Kirkstall Forge, later became a part of the Dana Corporation, and probably dissolved. But when you take those 1,000-year-old companies and dissolve them, that's always a good feeling. But
exactly. Yeah, that was a great ROI on that dissolution.
Yeah, so Kirkstall Forge made these axles, and correspondingly, of course, the parts availability for the Kirkstall Forge axles is pretty low.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the forklifts that use them are also rare. They're just like incredibly rare everything.
I'm going to listen to that podcast, though, the collectible forklift podcast. I'm sure that is just a laugh a minute.
One thing I've learned working with Land Rovers is, if something was made, another person collects it. And it doesn't matter how obscure, how silly, how ridiculous it is, there is a collector's market. If you've ever seen the YouTube video where the couple is splitting up, they're divorcing and splitting up their Beanie Babies, you know that people will collect anything and be very excited about it.
I have to say, my brother, and more so my father, got really into Beanie Babies. They were into the collecting of them. They had them. They had their little plastic cases, all this sort of stuff.
This is not something you should admit.
No, I know. And then decades later, of course, my daughter realized, and this was just a month ago, that in fact my father and brother had collected Beanie Babies, and there's nothing in this world she wanted than all those Beanie Babies, which of course were gotten rid of like a decade earlier. and it was crushing for her. She's really still just getting over the fact that there was a giant Beanie Baby treasure trove that they had amassed, and they didn't keep it for her. So,
well, she shouldn't worry because I'm sure that will be scarring in other respects later in her life.
yeah, exactly. Once she realizes that two nearly grown men collected just a ton of Beanie Babies. There's a story where my father got into not a physical altercation, but like a verbal altercation with an old lady in a Beanie Baby shop trying to get some exclusive Beanie Baby.
Oh no!
It came to words. Apparently, it was a
Oh
struggle.
no!
I'm not sure which one of them was more into it, my brother or my dad, but
Oh man!
yeah. Anyways,
The,
and my dad, he's a fairly stoic gentleman, so it's interesting to know that he was in the heat of the Beanie Baby collecting.
wow, so many people's opinion of you has just changed and not in a positive direction right now.
It's true. Well, stay tuned for Ike and I's Beanie Baby Collector podcast coming later on. We'll have some special Beanie Baby Patreon content as well. Smash that like button and subscribe.
So the Forest Rover, made in small numbers, several examples were given to the Hydrology Institute in the UK.
Oh.
They were evaluated basically by several institutions. The BC Hydro and BC Forest Service had, depending on the account you listen to, either one or two vehicles. The vehicle that I have, which is not complete, but I have the important parts, the axles and the wheels and the special dash panel with the speedometer that only goes up to 40 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That vehicle was supposedly the Canadian, hydro vehicle that was used for evaluation up there. And I'm told that was assembled in the United States potentially by Rover North America in the Bay Area. And they have a photo of it next to a standard example. So my vehicle was most likely built using a left-hand drive North American spec car as the basis for it. And it's supposedly the only left-hand drive one that was ever made. When the Snowy Hydro scheme in Australia, when they were working on that, the Snowy hydro dam project in southeastern Australia, when that was being made, they built their own. They built their own sort of it's kind of a Forest Rover thing, and you can find pictures of this vehicle online. And basically, they made one without planetary axles, and it was a horrible, horrible failure. Typically they're pretty clever down there, but that particular vehicle did not fare well.
Oh,
but
that's too bad. So what do you think for yours, a timeline to get it back into service and, I don't know, maybe start your own hydro scheme? What's next? What do you need to get it done?
Oddly, I do have a dam building project that it would probably be useful for. So I'm pretty excited about potentially using my Forest Rover for that dam building project. But it does depend on the availability of some parts that are scarce. And there's, I think, one of the planetary gears is missing. And so fortunately, it's not a helical gear. It's a straight cut gear. So I can probably have that particular gear wire EDM'd. And there's some general restoration work that has to happen. I did find some wheel cylinders for it. I've been busy trying to get that off the ground, but I'm very excited about putting that vehicle, pressing it back into service in some capacity. Yeah, that's a really neat example, very rare vehicle, and very just what a cool car.
Yeah, it's a super neat car. One of my favorite, and I completely agree. I think every little kid, that when you draw a truck as a little kid, that's what you draw: giant tires and like a little tiny cab on top. Just fantastic.
Silly
Really cool
car.
So, Ike, a tip-top tech tip to complement our online series of tip-top tool tips. If you haven't been to our Patreon to check out the tip-top tool tips, please do so, because they're great. At one point, I ripped my hand open with a piece of safety wire and bled all over a video, and just had to cut around it. So there's a fun bonus feature that
was the most popular one.
It was, funny enough. Yeah, it's weird. In a different kind of circle, though, but we have a lot of S&M sort of people.
Tune into our Patreon, where Steven hurts himself in every video.
Every video, I get some kind of a small injury. I just stabbed myself with the end of safety wire. And if you are familiar with safety wire, it's rigid, and when you cut it, you tend to cut it at a bit of an angle, so it's razor sharp. And but thankfully, it's like surgical steel, so it's all right.
It'll be like that Middle Eastern guy that does the electrical videos that shocks himself in every one. It'll be incredibly popular.
That's what I'm going for. That's my plan.
Incredibly popular.
Every video. So today's top tech tip is hanging doors on your Land Rover. As everyone knows, the hinges sort of control the back and forth, up and down panel gap situation, and it's a challenge. I've seen a couple of people now. Just this came to me during some Instagramming this week, and people frustrated with trying to get their panel gaps correct on the Land Rover doors. The secret is, of course, they came panel gapped incorrectly from the factory because they're such a nuisance to get correct. So, Ike, what's your trick for getting Land Rover doors, be they Defender or Series, hung properly? Of course, every model is a little different, but what are some general tip-top tech tips?
Well, I think before we do our tip, we need to talk about, a historical incident in the Land Rover factory that has to do with panel gaps. For those of you that don't know, when Land Rover was building their Series and Defender vehicles, they brought in competing vehicles to evaluate their, door seals and panel gaps. And they had, I think it was a Toyota, a Mercedes-Benz, and a Land Rover. And they were evaluating these vehicles during the design process. And they set them next to one another. And this was kind of before a lot of the animal rights things that we have today. They put a cat into each vehicle. And the idea was that they would come back each successive day and check on the condition of the cat, and that would tell them how well the panels fit, how the door seals worked, and so on. And so they came back the next day, and the cat in the Mercedes-Benz had perished. And so they were like, this is probably the standard that we need to go for.
Airtight. Nothing gets in or out. Yeah.
And then the next day they went to the Toyota. It was still alive, but in a week's time, the cat in the Toyota had perished. And so they were like, well, we probably need to be above that. And they checked on the cat in the Land Rover prototype vehicle that they were working with, and the cat was just gone. It was just gone. They couldn't even find it. And so I think that was during like British Leland. So I think that's the standard that we still enjoy with most Series and Defender vehicles today.
It is a completely cat permeable environment.
The cat is gone. The cat is gone. We should make stickers that say the cat is gone. The cat is gone. So I think that setting your panel gaps on your Series or Defender vehicle is very important to your enjoyment of the vehicle. There's a lot of restorations out there online where people close the door and the door overlaps the tub, or like there's the door top hits the windshield frame, or various things. And the Land Rover is built basically from the back to the front. The British phrase back to front, that comes from the assembly of the Land Rover Series and Defender vehicles. And so there's not really a lot of adjustment in the tub on a Series or Defender. So the tub is kind of in a fixed location. So your adjustability has to happen at the firewall. And there's two places that happens: the position of the firewall and the hinges themselves. And so ideally, the leading and trailing edge of your door would be parallel to one another, right? Which is not always true. That's not always true on every door.
No.
But ideally, that would be the case. And that would mean that your trailing edge of the firewall and your leading edge of the tub should be parallel to one another in order to get the door to close correctly between it. And so what we do when we're assembling vehicles is we have a dimension that we've taken, and you can do this too. Find the Land Rover friend that you have whose doors shut the best and measure the distance from their bulkhead to their tub, and then set yours the same, as long as your doors are the same, which they probably are. But, that's the sort of tolerance that you want for your bulkhead. And the bulkhead has some adjustability because there's typically a bulkhead support bracket that goes down to the chassis, and then there's a, bolts that go through the chassis, or usually the bulkhead outrigger, and we leave those loose so that we can move it front and back, and we can angle it a little bit if we have to, and then we set our door gaps, and then we tighten all that down. So all your adjustability for the gap itself is going to be in the firewall, and then you can adjust the door in the hinges. There's play in the hinges, as long as they aren't super rusty and the captive nuts aren't stuck or locked or fixed into position. Then you've got some adjustability within that gap, but it's really important to set that gap before you hang your door.
Yeah, it is crucial to have that. I have an aluminum story stick that is set to that gap width, so that when things are going back together, that it gets put back together correctly. Because I've definitely had, specifically the Series 1, accidentally have the firewall, tightened all the way up, and the doors don't go back on anymore. You can't get the door in the hole, and then you're, God damn it. So you have to drive the bulkhead forward and shim behind it a little bit to make sure.
It doesn't, and that's another thing that you should know, is that Land Rover used at least 37 shims in every vehicle. So if you're fitting the doors and tub and firewall and all that stuff, you must have at least 37 shims.
Oh yeah, you just a bag full of shims.
Just a bag of shims.
Oh my goodness.
So that's another good point that you bring up, which is the actual door latch. A lot of people are adjusting the door so that the door latch fits, but really you got to get your gaps correct before you worry about the latch. And the latch has its own adjustment, and you can shim the latch forward and back. And so that should be a secondary. Getting the door to close should be secondary to getting the door to fit, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Then get it to close, then get it to stay closed. It's those three crucial steps in that order. That's the
other thing. The angle of the windshield frame is also kind of important, because the windshield is hinged, right?
Yep.
And so things that you would not expect to affect the door closing frequently do. So one of the things is the thickness of the seal that goes in between the firewall and the bottom of the windshield frame affects how the door shuts, because that affects the angle at which the windshield sits. So if the seal is too thin, the windshield has a tendency to come back. The rake or angle at which it comes back is a little more acute than it should be, and then it interferes with the door top at the very top. So that's another thing, is when you're hanging the doors, once you kind of get it all where you think you want it, put the door top on before you finally fix it into position, because the angle of the firewall and the angle of the windshield frame is also important to how the door top closes against it. To further complicate matters, the aftermarket door tops do not have the same angle as the factory ones.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's like some popular aftermarket door tops, I think Rocky Mountain, and then there's standard replacement door tops that are aftermarket, and none of those have the same angle as the factory door tops.
And usually, if you're dealing with a Series 1 door top, either you're fabricating it or you're having somebody fabricate it, all bets are off, because it's I don't think any two runs of doors are exactly the same. So yeah, a lot of definitely some shimming under the windshield in the Series 1 to make sure that it's sitting, that piece of bar is sitting at exactly the right angle. And then of course one small little galvanized bar to keep the soft top on, not like the Series 2 and 3 that had a whole galvanized piece that sat there. Nope, just a little bar that connected to another bar that wiggles back and forth in the middle. So really it's sort of like pitching a tent more than it is putting a roof on a car. So it's plenty of room for
speaking of pitching a tent, you have a piece of gear.
Great.
You have a piece of gear that is for your trousers. I understand.
Speaking of pitching a tent, those of us who own a Defender with roll down window doors know that the door catch, which is a piece that sits on the B pillar and is what catches the little hooked hand that keeps the door closed, allows you most of the time, it's supposed to keep the door closed. The factory ones have a little nylon, the world's junkiest nylon sort of roller in there so that the catch, can actuate against it. And of course that roller gets eaten out like inside of a week. And that, it totally turns to garbage. So another thing that happens, so you're often left without that piece in there, which then allows it to rattle around. The door can rattle a little bit because that little roller that's supposed to take up that space isn't there anymore. Another thing you'll notice that when you get in, it happens to be a sort of hooked little end on it where the pressed metal piece forms a little dish on the end. And so you get in and your belt loop will get caught on it. And if you're Defender is of any stature, you're probably putting a little effort into getting into the car. You've got a little bit of momentum behind you. It will grab onto that loop and tear it off of your pants immediately. And so there's actually, famously, Bear Grylls has a line of clothing, Bear Grylls pants, I have a pair of Bear Grylls pants, which are some of my favorite, like mountaineering trousers. And everybody makes fun of me because I have a Bear Grylls pants theme song. I love them so much. But they actually, they have a little snap.
They have a pocket for bats. You can snack on.
Bats in there. Yeah, you get a snack bat. You get a little peckish, you get your snack bat out, and it's great. Let's get some grubs, some snack bats. It's fantastic.
If I may interject, the problem in this instance, and I've seen this happen, is if you have extremely durable pants and you're getting out of your vehicle and you hook a belt loop on that, it can take you clean off your feet.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can fall into a puddle of mud. I've seen it happen.
You go under, because you kind of flip, your feet flip under the car and you go straight down. And the same thing is actually true going in. If you have like a pair of like Carhartt pants on or something that has like belt loops meant to like lift a person by for whatever reason, the same thing happens. You try to get in and it stops you from getting in, so you just face plant into the center console. That's I have the the steel center console, so you just face plant right into the sharp corner of a steel center console. So it's a real bad thing. So anyways,
I was wondering where that scar came from.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I only have one eye. Our friends at X Engineering, X-Eng in the UK, the guys who make the tractor brake for the Defender, the disc brake that's actually from I believe a lawn tractor. And they've retrofit it to fit into your Defender and make a much better brake than the drum brake that comes with the car, have made something called the X Trouser, which is a door catch for your Defender that has been specially designed to be totally smooth, like a newborn baby. Totally smooth, and it will not catch like a Ken doll. It's just there's nothing down there. It's just there's nothing to grab. Totally smooth entry into the car. It won't grab your belt loops. It won't wreck anything, and it has a steel. Now, I did just wear out my steel roller, but it has a steel roller I think it's a milder steel than the catch on the door, because otherwise the door catch would wear out, and this definitely wears out. But it's a steel roller, and so it doesn't wear out as quickly, and it keeps the doors from kind of rattling when that nylon bush runs out. So it's a pretty handy upgrade, and it is definitely my favorite Land Rover accessory of this particular podcast. I suggest that if you want them, you should get them. Britpart actually carries the X-Eng stuff to some limited degree, but they certainly carry the trouser saver, the X Trouser, and you can get it through anywhere you can get Britparts. So they're real handy. I'm a big fan.
I'm gonna. I just don't wear pants when I'm driving my vehicle, so it's not a problem. Not a problem at all. So I want to talk about my favorite piece of Land Rover accessory or kit, the shovel. That's my favorite Land Rover accessory, the shovel, because the Land Rover is so capable that it never gets stuck. You rarely need this implement, but for extracting other vehicles, much to their chagrin, a shovel is extremely handy. And I love the 3/4 size British military shovel
Yeah.
with the T handle.
T-handle. Yeah.
That's the best. And they were made by, I think, 3,700 different manufacturers.
Oh yeah.
So
no two the same. Yeah. Any one
no
that you
two are
want.
the
Yeah.
same. Yeah, you cannot find two that are the same. They're all stamped differently. They're they slightly different, foot ledges. They're slightly different shapes. They're all different. I think I have 20 of these shovels, and they're all different. One says Bulldog on it. One says Lucas, as if the electrical company made the shovel. One says Britool, I think, which was a famous tool and hand tool manufacturer. They all are slightly different lengths. They're within an inch or inch and a half of each other. They have different pegs that hold the cross piece in place. They're all different. Some are cast, some are stamped, some are welded. They're all totally different. So I think during World War II, basically anyone that could make a shovel was making these shovels.
Making shovels. Yeah. And I think no, I agree. They're super, super handy. I have a Carter's longer shovel, the sort of the sort of garden spade size on the Camel Trophy size on both my Camel Trophy truck and my Defender. And I don't know that I've used it to recover myself ever. I've certainly used it to recover someone else. But
why would you? Your vehicle is so capable.
So capable. Most of the time. It's used around the camp. I use it to tend fire. I use it to build a little animal trench around my tent or whatever that is.
An animal trench around your tent,
so I can keep all the animals in a trench around my tent to ward off other would-be camp assailants. I guess I don't know.
An animal trench. I love that. I love it.
Someone asked me when we I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, like, oh, how did you get your shovel weathered like that? Like, is it, what did you do to it? I said, well, it's been strapped to the wing of my car for 10 years. And that sort of does it. That takes care of it. Put it in
leave it out in the weather.
Yeah. Just leave it out and leave it outside for 10 years.
I love when someone asks a question like that. How did your shovel get weathered? And you're like, I left it out in the weather.
The weather, I don't know.
The weather did it. I have a couple of shovel tips. I have 2 shovel tips. One is actually for tending fire, like you were mentioning a little bit ago. So one thing on a cold winter's evening that is just lovely is to take some coals in your shovel, in your 3/4 size British military shovel. Take some coals, put it under your camp chair, provided that your camp chair is of a normal height. Just having a heated seat on an evening camping is just really nice. You gotta make sure the coals are not too high. Might melt the vinyl or the nylon of your seat there, but it's really nice. Just a really nice thing. Also, make sure that you're obviously using some fire safety common sense there. Don't want to put that next to flammable materials. But what a pleasant thing, especially the ladies really like the heated camp chair. So I can't tell you how happy that'll make people when you're like, check this out.
Let me heat your camp chair for you.
Yeah. On a cold evening camping, that's lovely. And then after
you've pitched your tent, then heat the tent
after you've dug your animal trench.
Dig the animal trench.
My second shovel tip is always bring 2. Otherwise, you're going to be digging alone.
Yeah, you never dig alone. On that note, Ike, never dig alone, never podcast alone. It is a pleasure as always. It has been a slice. I am so glad we had an opportunity to swap tips on animal trench digging and whatever else. So we'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful week. And again, for anyone who is interested in some exceptional tip-top tool tips, head on over to our Patreon. Check it out. Again, as we always say, if you truly enjoy spending time with our good friend Ike, why not let everybody on the Apple Podcast platform know that is one of the ways that you spend your Monday. And remember to rate 5 stars. If you don't feel like rating 5 stars, maybe go to somebody else's podcast and rate them less than 5 stars, because we really appreciate your 5. So we are currently the top hit when you search Land Rover on the Apple Podcast app. So there aren't a lot of podcasts about Land Rovers, but hey, we'll take what we can get.
Like and subscribe. Great to see you, Stephen. I'm looking forward to next week.
All right. Cheers for now, Ike.
All right. Take care.